Something's gone missing on America's roads, and it's more than just the roar of motorcycles. Rides are quieter, diners once packed with chrome are boarded up, and the average motorcyclist is now over 50, while new dealerships vanish every month. This isn't rumor, it's unfolding right now, reshaping everything the motorcycle community stands for. If the motorcycle community is dying, here's why, feels dramatic. Consider what's truly at risk. Not just machines, but a culture, a freedom, a way of life vanishing in plain sight. The deeper question, how did it come to this, and is it already too late to turn back, reveals more than anyone expects. Highways that used to echo with the thunder of exhaust are starting to feel almost hollow. Early mornings, there's barely a single tail light stretching out ahead. Gas stations that once buzzed with riders grabbing coffee now sit quiet. The air pumps untouched. Even the old diner on Route 12, the one with the faded neon and the wall of ride photos, has its windows papered over. Friday nights used to mean parking lots full of bikes lined up in rows, riders swapping stories and planning the next trip. Now, you can pull in and find nothing but empty spaces and a few stray oil stains, where chrome used to gleam under the lights. It's not just the big events, even the small things have faded. The meetup spot at the edge of town, where you'd always find someone tinkering or swapping gear, sits empty most afternoons. The familiar faces, some you'd only know by their helmet or the way their engine sounded coming up the road, aren't showing up anymore. The group rides that once stretched a dozen deep now barely fill a single lane. Sometimes you catch yourself waiting for the rumble to roll in, but it's just the wind and a couple of cars passing by. There's a certain kind of silence that settles in when something's missing. It's not just the lack of noise, but the absence of that shared energy, the feeling that you're part of something bigger rolling down the highway. You notice it most on those stretches of open road that used to be a parade of bikes, where now you might not see another rider for miles. It's like the soundtrack has been turned down, and all that's left is the faint memory of what these roads used to sound like. You start to wonder where everyone went. The shops that used to sponsor ride nights have closed their doors. The bulletin boards that once overflowed with flyers for poker runs and charity rides are bare. Even online, the chatter is quieter. The sense of belonging that came from just being out there, part of the flow, feels harder to find. The highways haven't changed, but the people who made them come alive are fading from the picture. And the silence that's left behind is hard to ignore. That old diner on Route 12 wasn't just a place to grab a burger and a bottomless cup of coffee. For years, it was the heart of Saturday mornings. Chrome stacked up along the curb, the door chiming every few minutes as another rider came in shaking off the cold. There was always someone at the corner booth with the map spread out, arguing about the best back roads to take, and a couple of regulars swapping parts out in the parking lot. The walls were covered in snapshots, dozens of group rides, charity runs, and a few faded Polaroids from way back when. If you were new in town or just passing through, you could count on someone sliding over and making room, asking where you'd ridden in from or what you were riding. But that's all gone now. The last time I stopped by, the neon sign was dark, and the windows were covered in brown paper. No more smell of frying bacon, no more grease-stained napkin sketches of custom builds. The bulletin board that used to be packed with ride flyers and handwritten notes, someone looking for a lost jacket, someone else organizing a poker run, was stripped bare long before they locked the doors. I remember pulling in one Sunday, expecting to see the usual mix of bikes out front, but there was only a single truck and a for-lease sign in the window. It felt like stumbling onto the aftermath of a party that everyone else had already left. Losing a place like that hits harder than you'd think. It isn't just about the food or the coffee. It's about the feeling that you belonged somewhere, even if just for an hour over breakfast. That diner was where you learned who was selling a set of pipes, who needed a hand with a carb rebuild, or which roads had fresh gravel. It was where you heard about someone's kid finally passing their license test, or where a veteran would quietly pay for a stranger's meal. Without it, the community feels scattered. The rituals, those small, ordinary check-ins, are missing. And when a spot like that disappears, it's not just about a business closing. It's a piece of the story gone, a page torn out that you can't tape back in. The roads are still there, but the places that made them feel like home are vanishing. And the silence that follows isn't just quiet, it's empty in a way that's hard to put into words. Let's start with the numbers, because the story here is written in hard data. The average motorcyclist in the US is now over 50 years old. That's not a guess. That's straight from the Motorcycle Industry Council. Back in the 1980s, the typical owner was 27. Now, it's a full generation older, and that number keeps climbing. You see it at every rally, every swap meet, every Sunday ride. More gray in the beards, more reading glasses on the tables, fewer young faces in the crowd. But it's not just about who's showing up. It's about what's happening on the road. In 1975, riders under 30 made up 80% of motorcycle fatalities. The over 50 crowd, just 3%. Fast forward to 2019, and those numbers have flipped. Now, riders over 50 account for 37% of motorcycle deaths, while the under 30s are down to 28%. That's a complete reversal in less than 50 years. By 2023, the split was almost even. 33% of deaths were riders over 50, 30% were under 30. The average age of a rider killed in a crash is now 43. What's behind this? It's not just that older riders are taking more risks. The whole makeup of the riding community has changed. Baby boomers who grew up wrenching on bikes in the 70s and 80s are still riding, but the generations after them aren't filling in the gaps. The handoff from parent to kid, uncle to nephew, just isn't happening like it used to. Instead, you've got the same crew getting older together, and the bikes are getting bigger, heavier, and faster, matching the wallets but not always the reflexes. The safety data tells its own story. Older riders aren't just more likely to be in fatal crashes, they're more likely to be seriously hurt when things go wrong. Riders over 60 are 2.5 times more likely to land in the ER after a crash, and 3 times more likely to end up in the hospital compared to younger riders. It's not just about reaction time or vision. With age, bones are more brittle, healing is slower, and the injuries just hit harder. Even with all the gear and all the experience, the body can only take so much. Meanwhile, the bikes themselves have changed. The average engine size in fatal crashes has jumped from 769 cubic centimeters in 1990 to nearly 1,000 cubic centimeters by the early 2000s. These aren't starter bikes. They're big, powerful machines, and they take a lot more to handle, especially if you're coming back to riding after years away or picking up the hobby later in life. But here's the part nobody wants to talk about. The pipeline is drying up. The percentage of riders over 50 has climbed from around a quarter in 2004 to nearly half today. At the same time, the share of riders under 30 is shrinking fast. Women are joining in bigger numbers, which is great. 22% of Gen X bikers are women, 26% for millennials. But overall, the youth ranks are thinning out. The new blood just isn't coming in fast enough to replace the old guard. So when you look at those empty seats at the diner, the quiet group rides, the fading club rosters, it's all right there in the data. The median age keeps ticking up, the fatality charts keep shifting, and the faces in the crowd keep getting more familiar every year. The community isn't just getting older, it's getting smaller, and the road ahead is looking emptier unless something changes. All right, let's talk money, because the price of freedom on 2 wheels isn't what it used to be. Once upon a time, you could pick up a used bike for a couple $1,000s, slap on some cheap insurance, and hit the road with a helmet and whatever jacket you already owned. Now, not even close. Walk into a dealership today, and even the so-called entry-level bikes start at $8,000 or $9,000, and that's before you even talk about taxes, fees, or the must-have accessories they'll try to sell you. If you want something with a little power, or even just a recognizable badge on the tank, you're looking at $10,000, $12,000, maybe $15,000, easy. And that's just for the bike itself. But that's only the first punch. Insurance for a new rider, especially if you're under 25, is a killer. The average monthly premium for a 16-year-old in 2024? $103. That's over $1,200 a year, and that's assuming you can even get a policy on your own. Some companies won't touch you unless you're added to your parents' plan. For a 20-year-old, you're still looking at over $60 a month, and that's for basic coverage. Full coverage? Forget it. If you're in a city or you've got anything but a spotless record, those numbers only go up. And we haven't even gotten to the gear yet. If you want to ride smart, and you should, you're looking at $1,000 or more for a decent helmet, jacket, gloves, boots, and pants. Sure, you can shop the sales or buy used, but even then, you're not walking out for less than a few hundred. And if you want anything that actually fits or protects you in a real crash, that's going to cost. Skip it and you're rolling the dice with your skin and bones. Add it all up, and the math gets ugly fast. Let's say you're a new rider, 22 years old, looking at a basic bike. 10 grand for the machine, another grand for gear, plus that insurance bill. You haven't even paid for gas, maintenance, or registration yet. And maintenance isn't a small thing either. Oil changes, tires, chain adjustments. If you're not handy, the shop charges add up quick. Even the basics can run you $500 to a couple thousand a year, depending on how much you ride. Need a set of new tires? That's $300, easy. A brake job? Another couple hundred. And if you bought used, you might be inheriting someone else's problems. Compare that to a car. For the same money, you can get something with 4 wheels, a roof, a heater, and a trunk for your groceries. Insurance is usually cheaper, and you don't need to buy a whole new wardrobe just to commute to work. So unless you're absolutely hooked on the idea of riding, or you've got money to burn, it's a tough sell. The numbers just don't work out for most people starting from scratch. And it's not just the sticker price. The industry itself has been pushing prices up, not down. Since 2020, the average manufacturer's suggested retail price for motorcycles has jumped more than 40%. That's not inflation. That's manufacturers seeing how far they can push before buyers walk away. Some of them have even admitted it. Push prices until we see resistance. That's a real quote from inside the business. There are bikes out there that cost 15 grand to buy, but only cost 4 grand to build. The rest is markup, plain and simple. Tariffs haven't helped either. Imported bikes from Europe and Japan got slapped with a 25% tariff in 2025. That's 2 to 5 grand tacked onto the price of a new bike overnight. Dealers are stuck with inventory they can't move, and buyers are left waiting or looking elsewhere. Even the used market isn't safe. Prices there jumped 10 to 20% just because people are trying to dodge the new bike sticker shock. And with parts and maintenance costs climbing, it's not like you can save much by going old school. So when people ask why there aren't more young riders on the road, it's not a mystery. The passion is still there for some, but passion doesn't pay for a $10,000 bike, a $1,000 helmet, and $100 a month for insurance. For most would-be riders, the dream stalls out at the bank. That's the real wall, one you can't just power through with enthusiasm. And until something changes, the cost of chasing freedom on 2 wheels is going to keep a lot of new blood on the sidelines. Scroll through any group chat with teenagers, and it's a wall of memes, YouTube clips, and TikToks about cars, gaming, and whatever's trending this week. Ask about motorcycles, and you'll get a shrug or maybe a story about someone's uncle who used to ride. For most young people, the idea of chasing adventure doesn't mean heading out to the edge of town on the 2 wheels. It means logging in. Fortnite, Forza, and virtual reality headsets have replaced the old Saturday morning scramble to the garage. The thrill is digital now, and the risk is measured in respawns, not road rash. That's not just a gut feeling either. Youth lifestyle studies show a steep drop in hands-on hobbies among Gen Z. Back in the day, you'd find a crowd of teenagers wrenching on bikes or cars in someone's driveway. These days, fewer than 1 in 10 high schoolers reports regular time spent fixing anything mechanical. The rest? They're building digital empires, not swapping spark plugs. Even the classic driver's license milestone is getting pushed back. In 1996, 85% of 18-year-olds had a driver's license. By 2021, that number had dropped to just 61%. For motorcycles, the numbers are even lower. Part of the problem is how complicated it's gotten just to get started. Getting a motorcycle license used to be a quick trip to the DMV and a basic skills test. Now, it's a maze of paperwork, mandatory safety courses, and multi-stage permit systems that can take weeks or months to finish. In some states, you need to schedule a weekend class months in advance, show up with your own gear, and pass both written and riding exams before you're even allowed on the street. For a 19-year-old balancing school, work, and a social life, that's a lot to ask, especially when a car, a bus pass, or a rideshare app gets you where you need to go with less hassle. And even if you clear all those hurdles, there's the matter of insurance. For anyone under 25, motorcycle insurance is brutal, sometimes more than the monthly payment on the bike itself. Add in the cost of decent gear, and you're staring down a bill that makes a used Honda Civic look like a bargain. It's no wonder so many young people stick to screens instead of saddles. But it's not just about money or paperwork. There's a cultural drift at play. The old image of the rebel rider tearing down the highway doesn't have the same pull it used to. When adventure is a click away and your friends are all online, the idea of spending hours learning to ride just to maybe join a group that might not even welcome you feels like a stretch. Social media is full of highlight reels, supercars, viral stunts, and influencers with million-dollar garages. Motorcycles just aren't in the picture for most of Gen Z. Ask around and you'll hear the same thing. Why bother with all the hassle when you can get your kicks online? For a lot of young people, the answer is simple. They don't. The road that used to be an open invitation now feels more like a locked gate. Until something changes, the digital world is winning the race for their attention. Step into any dealership these days, and the silence is hard to ignore. The rows of bikes that used to draw crowds, the salespeople who once hustled to keep up with weekend traffic, even the smell of rubber and polish. It's all faded. Showrooms that felt like the beating heart of the community now echo with empty space and unsold inventory. It's not just a slow season. It's a sign of something deeper breaking down. The numbers back it up. In 2006, the US motorcycle market hit its peak. Over 500,000 new bikes sold, and Harley Davidson alone moved more than 260,000 units. Fast forward to today, and sales are less than half what they were. According to the Motorcycle Industry Council, new motorcycle and scooter sales dropped another 4.5% in 2024. That's not a blip. That's nearly 2 decades of sliding, and every year, the losses stack up. Harley's flagship models, the Road Glide and Street Glide, saw a 6% drop last year, while Japanese and European brands aren't faring much better. Honda's down 5.3%, Yamaha's MT-07 slipped 4%. Even in Europe, registrations are off by more than 4%, and in places like Italy and Germany, some segments are down double digits. But the real gut punch comes at the local level. High Country Harley Davidson, a staple in Colorado and Wyoming for 25 years, shut its doors for good in 2025. Same story in San Francisco, New York, Illinois. Legacy shops closing up, sometimes after decades. The list grows every month, and it's not just mom and pop stores. Big, multi-location groups are bailing out too. The company's own numbers tell the story. As of December 2023, Harley Davidson had 589 dealership points left in the States, down from over 700 not so long ago. Industry estimates put the total number of U.S. motorcycle dealership closures in the last 5 years somewhere between 500 and 1,000. For Harley specifically, that's about 150 shops gone, nearly 1 in 5. There's even a coalition now, the Heritage Dealer Alliance, with around 135 dealers banding together to fight back against what they call predatory policies and impossible demands from the top. That's not a sign of a healthy system. The problem isn't just fewer bikes rolling out the door. Dealers are drowning in inventory they can't move, forced to take on models nobody wants, and stuck with facilities built for a boom that never came. Some are paying tens of thousands a month just to keep the lights on and the doors open, and every unsold bike on the floor is another drag on the bottom line. The days when a good month meant selling out and ordering more are long gone. Now, a good month means you might poach a few sales from the next town over, if they're still in business. Meanwhile, the industry's big bet on the future, electric motorcycles, hasn't paid off. Harley spun off its Livewire brand in a blaze of press releases and promises, but the reality is hard to spin. In 2024, Livewire shipped just 612 bikes. That's not a typo. That's less than 3 bikes per dealership for the entire year, and the trend is getting worse, not better. The first quarter of 2025, only 33 units sold, down from 117 the year before. Financial losses for Livewire hit $110 million in 2024 alone. Even with new, supposedly more affordable models, the market just isn't there. Dealers aren't ordering, customers aren't buying, and the infrastructure to support these bikes, charging stations, service techs, parts, is nowhere near ready. All of this leaves the dealership as something of a ghost town. What used to be the town square for riders, a place to meet, swap stories, get advice, and feel part of something bigger, now feels more like a waiting room nobody wants to sit in. When a dealership closes, it's not just a business shutting down, it's a loss of community infrastructure. The bulletin boards come down, the ride nights disappear, and the sense of belonging that came from just hanging around the shop vanishes. For a lot of riders, especially new ones, that was their entry point, their safety net, their motivation to keep going. Without it, the whole scene feels thinner, more fragile, and a lot less welcoming. Dealerships aren't just places to buy bikes. They're where the next generation learns the ropes, where old-timers pass down tips, and where the culture keeps itself alive. When those places disappear, it's not just about sales numbers or corporate profits. It's about losing the glue that holds the community together. And right now, those empty showrooms and locked doors are a warning. If nothing changes, the foundation the whole community stands on might not be there much longer. Pull up any motorcycle forum or Facebook group and you'll see it right away. Someone posts a picture of their first bike, a used Honda Rebel maybe, or a little Yamaha they picked up on Craigslist. The comments pile on. That's not a real bike. Come back when you get something with some power, or should have bought American. It's the same story at the local bike night. A new rider pulls in, nervous but excited, and instead of a handshake, they get the slow once-over. Eyes go to the badge on the tank, the size of the engine, the brand of their jacket. Sometimes nobody says a word. Sometimes it's a joke that lands just heavy enough to sting. It's not just online. I've watched it happen in person too. There's always that one guy at the bar or the parking lot, holding court about what counts as a real rider. Maybe he's got the patched vest, maybe he's just loud. Either way, he's quick to let you know if your bike, your gear, or even your route doesn't measure up. He'll tell you the only way to learn is the hard way, and that new blood should earn their stripes before they get any respect. And if you show up on something that doesn't fit the mold, maybe a scooter, maybe a sport bike, maybe just something not painted black and chrome, good luck getting anyone to talk to you at all. Scroll through screenshots of group chats or ride pages, and you'll see it spelled out. No squids, no newbies, keep it old school. There are whole threads dedicated to mocking people for asking beginner questions, or for wearing the wrong kind of helmet, or for not knowing the difference between a carb and a throttle body. Some of it's meant as tough love, but a lot of it just pushes people away. You see new riders post once, get dogpiled, and then disappear. The next time you check, their profile's gone or they're selling their gear. It's not just about brands or bike size either. Women who ride get grilled about whether they can handle their machines or if they're just riding on the back. Young riders get called out for being TikTok bikers or clout chasers. Older folks starting late get told they're having a midlife crisis. There's always a reason to draw a line, always a way to say, "You're not really one of us." I've heard the excuses. We're just keeping the tradition alive. We don't want people to get hurt. You have to pay your dues. But the truth is, every time someone gets shut out for asking a question, or for being new, or for not fitting the image, the community gets a little smaller. The forums get quieter, the rides get thinner. The next generation watches from the sidelines and decides it's not worth the hassle. And all that knowledge, all those stories, all that history, none of it gets passed on. It just sits there, locked behind a closed gate, until there's nobody left to open it. There's nothing wrong with pride or tradition, but when the welcome mat is rolled up, the whole scene goes stale. It's not just about who's in and who's out, it's about what gets lost when the door stays shut. The community doesn't die from the outside. It withers from within, every time a new rider is told they don't belong. There's a way forward, and it doesn't start with the industry or the brands. It starts with us, riders, clubs, and anyone who's ever felt at home in a parking lot full of bikes. The truth is, the communities that are still growing, the ones that feel alive, aren't the ones with the biggest budgets or the fanciest gear. They're the ones that make room for new faces, no matter what they ride or where they're from. Look at the numbers. Women now make up about 20% of all riders in the US. That's double what it was just a decade ago. And in clubs and groups that actually go out of their way to welcome new members, especially folks who don't fit the old school mold, membership doesn't just hold steady, it grows. Some of these groups have seen their numbers jump by 25 to 30% in just a couple of years. That's not a fluke. That's what happens when people feel like they belong and can see themselves in the crowd. It isn't about lowering the bar. It's about raising each other up. The most successful clubs have mentorship baked in, not as some formal program with checklists, but as a habit. Experienced riders reach out, offer to help with that first oil change, or take the time to ride alongside someone who's just learning the ropes. It's not about showing off, it's about showing up. When a new rider walks into a meetup, someone steps forward, shakes their hand, and says, "Glad you made it, let's ride." And it works. Groups that ditch the gatekeeping and focus on building each other up see more women joining, more young people sticking around, and more riders of every background showing up for the next ride. The Babes Ride Out movement is proof. What started as a handful of women meeting up for a weekend has turned into a network that stretches across the country. Their secret, open arms, shared knowledge, and a zero-tolerance policy for the old prove yourself first attitude. It's not just about the numbers either. It's about the ripple effect. Every time someone feels welcomed, they're more likely to pay it forward. They bring friends, they organize rides, they keep the culture moving. Clubs that focus on mentorship and inclusion don't just survive, they thrive. The rides get bigger, the stories get better, and the sense of belonging comes back stronger than ever. So if you want to see the community come back to life, start with the simplest thing: reach out. Invite someone to join you, answer a beginner's question without the sarcasm, or offer a word of encouragement at the next meetup. That's how the best groups are turning things around. Not with big marketing campaigns, but with small, real acts of welcome and support. The road ahead isn't closed, it just needs more people willing to ride alongside someone new. In 2023, the median age of motorcycle riders in the US topped 50 for the first time, according to Motorcycle Industry Council data. Over the past decade, new motorcycle sales have fallen to less than half their 2006 levels, while over 40% price increases and rising insurance costs have pushed the hobby further out of reach for newcomers. The closure of local dealerships, once the heart of the community, is now a documented trend. At the same time, studies show that despite women making up nearly 20% of new riders, overall participation continues to decline. Barriers like complex licensing and internal gatekeeping remain stubborn obstacles. Yet, the full impact of these losses on local culture and industry resilience is still not fully understood. What the evidence does show is clear. Without active mentorship, open communities, and support for new riders, the decline will likely continue. The documents and data point to one truth: reviving the motorcycle community depends on what its current members do next.